afternoon, everyone. Everyone okay? Good. Well, I'm really happy to join you this afternoon, and especially now that I know you've chosen to join us on your last day of class. There's a lot of other things that you could probably be doing, so thank you for coming. I think a lot of the panel might be sharing stories that are very personal, about personal failure that they individually may have been a part of. I'm going to share something that became personal to me, but really is more related to failure of a company and in part failure to an industry that impacted me, impacted lots of others. So that's kind of the context around this. And then I want to leave you with kind of 3 themes and maybe some advice about how to deal with those themes when you encounter them. And the first is, and I think I heard elements of it in Kevin's story, is accept that the failure, whatever it's coming from, is going to drive change and choices. And as soon as you put aside your denial about that, you're now unfrozen and able to move on to the next steps. So don't delay that, right? I'm going to share some anecdotes about that. The second point or theme I want to share with you is that in failure, in and around that crisis situation, you are going to learn at a pace that is more rapid than kind of any other time. It's just the nature of failure, and it's going to force that. So knowing that can kind of help you be open to that and even go faster. The third point I'm going to leave you with is many relationships are formed in failure, or existing relationships are greatly impacted. And the way that you handle yourself in that failure can greatly determine what happens to those relationships. And that's really, really key at the end of the day. Relationships, regardless of what we do, are the most important thing that we're going to have in our lives. So I want to leave you with that. So I started my career in the nuclear industry. I studied as a civil structural engineer at the University of South Carolina. I really, for many years, that was the path that I had chosen, and I built everything kind of in my life around doing that. I loved doing it. I did it for the better part of a decade and a half. Natural gas prices, this little thing called Fukushima, right? You put this picture together. The nuclear industry, as much as I and others believe in it from an environmental standpoint, an economic standpoint, it's under huge, huge, huge cost pressure. We're decommissioning plants at a rate like we never have. We're not building new plants at the rate we thought we would. I survived 6 rounds of layoffs, I believe, before I reached the point where I unfroze and said, I need to make a decision. There are no longer the opportunities and path that I want to see for myself at this company. And there was an element of shame there for me. I had chosen this path, I had invested a lot in it, and it was a very difficult thing for me to get unstuck. So returning to that first point, don't delay that. There's no shame in it. Accept that something is failing and recognize that you may have to make choices, or they'll be made for you in some cases. So what was I going to do? I had 15 years of experience, incredibly specific and technical, very, very valuable in a space that, well, is disappearing. A lot of searching, a lot of networking. I found myself talking to Ingersoll in operations and continuous improvement, which on paper I absolutely had 0 qualification or experience to do. And that gets to my second point. In failure, you will learn more rapidly than any other time because you have to. And I was able to find that a lot of experiences that I had with people, problems, math, all of these things that I really, really knew well were applicable just in a different vocabulary. Without having that crisis moment to force me to think that way, and by the way, convince others that I could do that kind of work, I absolutely never ever would have made that jump and completely changed what I'm doing with my life. I'm happy to say, looking back, I am very, very happy with the work that I'm doing now. I moved from operations into IT, an even bigger leap. I'll have to say probably fueled by the confidence that I had changing industries in the first place. No regrets there, but I had to accept that I was going to need to learn a lot of things and learn them very, very, very quickly. The third thing that I want to talk about is none of this transition for me, or success I could say, would be possible if I hadn't approached those challenges with humility, with energy. I think all of the relationships that I had to leave and all of the ones that I had to form in order to get out of that failure, those are absolutely essential ingredients. And I think if you, in failure, lend yourself to being bitter or short or even blame others, those relationships are going to take a color that you don't want them to take, or those relationships are not going to be formed. And I think eventually that would be a bad thing. That will help keep you in that failure. So again, those 3 points: accept that failure is going to force choice and change, embrace that, jump in. The second, you will learn faster in failure than in any other environment, so embrace that as well, relish in it. And then the third is relationships are impacted in failure. You often get that badge of honor with other folks in that failure if they're in it with you. Know that as well, shape that, be in the right mind frame to be humble and accept that, and good things will come from those relationships. So, thank you.